shortly or in the next episode of Louis Yam.
Good morning, Braden. Good morning, Noel. How is everyone doing? We'll get started here. We can start some chapter 17. We've got the project videos all spaced out, so it's kind of an open day. New t-shirt today, Night's Watch. So just trying out some new things. But how are you doing, Braden? How are you doing, Noel? Good to see you both here. Put the tags in the video. I think it might be a chapter 17 day. So, I don't know. Chapter 17. Good morning, Caitlin. Good to see you, Caitlin. Let's throw some points. Some Mewbot points. Mewbucks, Mewbots. We got Mewbots and Mewbooks. Not too bad. Ready for break. I'm doing pretty good. Good to see you. Good also seeing you this morning, Noel. I was like, yeah, it's Noel over there. Good seeing people around campus. That's what I like. It's just I go on walks. I catch my Pokemon. So I had a nice leisurely just you go around campus and you get to see everything. Like, I like seeing everyone out on Ped Walkway. Chapter 17 quiz, you got it. It's like, you go to Ped Walkway and there's usually something going on. Usually something. Someone somewhere doing something. And I like that. It's, I don't know, student groups, people visiting campus, see the tours. It's fun. I like seeing the tours and then you see all these people. I have a question about the project 50 kicks. Somebody, can I just target one group? Target one of the graphs. What do I need? So think about this. The executive summary, Caitlin, good question, is basically like, if I were to give you an executive summary of Harry Potter, it'd be like, Harry Potter was a film created by Disney in the early 2000s that created a franchise. So that's kind of like who this is and what are we doing? Like, that's the first sentence or two sentences, like who this is for, what are we doing? I feel like a zoo animal. I could see that. And then the next thing I would say is, at the very start of the film, Harry loses his parents to Voldemort, and a lightning bolt is put on his forehead. He then goes to live with his, whatever they are, parents, I don't know, godparents, aunt and uncle, something. He goes and lives with people that treat him really poorly, make him live under the stairs till he's whisked away to the Wizarding World, where he meets Ron and Hermione. At the Wizarding World, they go through many classes, of which he has Snape and other people who train him in the magical arts, and Dumbledore is his big mentor. And at the end of the first film, he fights a Horcrux. I think he fights the I don't know. I'm not a Harry Potter fan. This is Game of Thrones. He fights a Horcrux of Voldemort. And then from here, the Disney franchise, I think action item then, the Disney franchise will continue to make Harry Potter films and make Harry Potter merchandise and sell Harry Potter. So you think I gave you, what is Harry Potter? What's the story of the first film? Like, you got the big points of it. Like, you could be like, sorry, spoilers, if anyone, spoilers. So it's like, what is Harry Potter? What's the story of the first film? What are we going to do from here? Does that make sense? What an executive summary has? It has, who is this for and what is the deal with it? What's the whole report about? Because here's the thing, is the executive summary is like, you don't have to watch the first film anymore. Like, you're briefed on it. Like, if someone didn't know about Harry Potter, they'd be like, okay, cool, that's what Harry Potter is about, this wizard kid who goes to a wizarding school and he defeats Voldemort in the first film, kind of. What's a Horcrux? We didn't even say what a Horcrux was. I don't even know what a Horcrux is. But the point of an executive summary is you don't need to read the report. It's an executive summary. It's like a cliff notes of the whole report. And I think a lot of people don't get that, is that you don't want to do like a little tiny paragraph like this. It should be like a half-ish page. And I hate it when our graders take off for too much. You don't want to put the whole report in the executive summary because you're not summarizing then. You should condense it down to a degree. It's an art, not a science, on how do you condense it. It's like, how much do you take out? How much do you leave in? Everyone's going to have preferences. But you wouldn't watch the whole Harry Potter film if you're getting an executive summary of it. So that's what an executive summary is. Executive summary is taking the whole report, condensing it down so that people can get the key points and key takeaways and know what we're going to do and know what happened and know who we are, what we found, with numeric backing. Can't really give numeric backing for Harry Potter. It's like key details. So it's usually where people stumble a little bit on writing an executive summary. And you can kind of chat GPT a little bit. I would write it, and then I'd give ChatGPT your objectives. I always say this, last thing I'll say on this is do what we call the AI sandwich. Let me mark this video right here with executive summary, stat tool 1, project, executive summary. So when you write your executive summary, you could even have AI grade it, but don't just, and once again, never put personal details into executive summaries, and make sure you're allowed to use AI for any class you do, or personal details into AI, and make sure the class allows AI, which we allow. But the best way you're going to get the most out of AI is if you write your executive summary, then say to AI, here's my executive summary, here's what the class asked me to do, and did I meet these objectives, and how could I improve this? And then you're doing what we call the AI sandwich, where you write something, you put it into AI, and then you review it afterwards, and you make corrections to it. And then you ask the AI, where do you think I've done well? Where do you think I could improve? And things like that. And that's how to properly use AI. Like a lot of people are against it. A lot of teachers are against AI, but I'm all for it if you know how to use it. It's just people just say to the AI, write my executive summary, and then you don't get what you need because it doesn't know what you want. And it's searching the web for what's an executive summary, and it's finding conflicting details, and it's not doing it the way we want it. So you got to give it the instructions. You have to say, here's the instructions, here's what I wrote, and then you have to look at everything. So do that, write the executive summary. We're going to start here with some chapter 17. On to the next topic. Let's do it. So Noel, if you have a specific one, let me know. But here we are with Stat Tool 1, chapter 17. And let's do quiz. Do consumers spend more? Let's go check it out. Okay, do consumers spend more at Walmart or Target? They're advertising for them right here. And how are we going to look at this? So they give you the interval. Got that Red Bull flowing? I wish. I'm only on 2 cups of coffee. I might try to cut them out more. 2 Red Bulls next to me right there. So I try to go easier on the Red Bull. You never know. Try to get back in shape. Not in bad shape, but gotta be strong. So let's look at this right here. When you make an interval, I think people don't even understand what the interval is that they're making. The interval is an estimate of the true difference. The interval is an estimate of the true difference between means. So if you have Brian and Darren playing basketball, and we want to see how many points they get in a game, let's look at the interval. Now, this interval was found by doing the following formula. A lot of people just do not understand what this means. We have mu Brian, mu Darren. Okay. What does this mean? We're trying to estimate what? So what are we trying to estimate? What's the context of this? What are we trying to estimate? You have to know what the interval is to understand how to interpret it. Kind of, on average. So a big thing here is, so we're looking at how many points they get, and good job, Noel, right there. So we're trying to understand the true difference in the means. This is what a 2-sample t is. This is a 2-sample. So the 2-sample of it, oh my gosh. The 2-sample points to the 2 means, mu1, mu2, and then we're doing the difference between the 2 means. Does that make sense? So on average, what is the difference between the 2 means? And the t is mean. Just about Mr. T is mean in this class because t's are for the mean. So this is a 2-sample t because you have 2 groups and you're looking at the difference. Hey, Galen, good to see you there. We're explaining how to interpret this interval because a lot of people just don't understand what this interval is. So when you see this interval, here's where people get confused. If the interval, which it probably would in truth be this, was something like this, what? What does this interval mean? I'll throw 1,000 points for an answer, but 5,000 for the right answer. What does this interval mean? What does this interval mean? If you know how to interpret this, I will be amazed. A lot of people just say, I don't know. What does it mean? Because here's what people do. I'll tell you the wrong way. What people do immediately is people start looking at this and start connecting and saying, oh, kind of. Noel, you're on the right track. But what are we trying to understand? We're not trying to understand the true mean though. We're trying to understand what? Noel, you're on the right track. Kind of. What are we trying to understand? Remember what we're trying to understand. We're trying to understand. Great job, Caitlin. Throw Caitlin to 5,000 points. We're trying to understand the true difference. So if we're trying to understand the true difference, and the true difference is negative, who's getting more points on average? This is what a lot of the questions do. It's a lot of my Pearson questions that do this too. If the true difference is negative, what does that mean? Which person probably has more on average? Think of a way when you're subtracting numbers. We've got Brian minus Darren. Well, but be careful. You're all right, it's Darren. We might do it. We could do that today too, Kale, and we could do because I don't think we've done that. So maybe we'll hop over to that next. This is a good introduction to it. This is a good like, what are we doing even in the chapter 17? Because think about this. How would you rewrite this interval? Rewrite this interval with a margin of error. Rewrite this interval with a margin of error. Like rewrite this interval as something plus or minus something. Rewrite the interval as something plus or minus something. These are really good questions. These are the theory that you have to know, like, well, like that's a lower and an upper. So rewrite it with a center and a margin of error. I feel like people skip through this sometimes. They're like, I don't need to know the theory. If you know the theory, you can solve most things. Because then you can be like, that's the answer to this, and then you have to solve all the questions. Now plus or minus 8, good guess. So how do you get the center of the interval? So think 30 to 40, what's the center? 30 to 40, what's the center? 30 to 40, what's the center? You have to do a bunch of these and be like, I know how to get center. Boom. 30 to 40, what's 35? What's the margin of error? You got it. So you can do that one. So what's the margin of error on that one? 30 to 40, what's the margin of error? 30 to 40, what's the margin of error? It's a common mistake that I don't want you to make right here. Because you go 30 through 40, it's 35, what? Margin of error would be what? We're throwing points, we're throwing points. Don't worry about being wrong. Just give it a shot. 5, you're right. That's it. A lot of people say 10. A lot of people say 10. A lot of people will say 10, but that's the whole length of the interval. The margin of error is half the length of the interval. Great job, everyone. So do the same for this interval right here. It's negative. Just ignore the negatives if you want. It's easier if you ignore the negatives. It looks weird now because you shouldn't have 10 to 2. It should be 2 to 10. But just ignore the negatives for a moment and do the same thing. Do the same thing you did that you know how to do. Just, I'll throw the negative on if you want. If you don't put a negative, I'll assume you put a negative. But just write the interval now. Like you just did it for 30 to 40, like that. You're like, I know how to do that. Psh. Center is the average, margin of error is plus or minus. So what would this be? What's the center of the interval? What's the margin of error? What's the center? What's the margin of error? Then we're going to do homework after this. What's the center? What's the margin of error? Don't worry about being wrong. We throw points either way. Just take guesses. If you're wrong, it's fine. If you're right, yay. Braden's got the margin of error. Plus or minus -4. That's the margin of error. Correct. What's the center of the interval? The margin of error, because it's 2 to 10 is 4 or 8, cut in half 4. Center is -6. Great job. There you go. And then you check your math, right? Because after you write this, great job also, Noel, right there. Oh, and then you threw an extra, the 1, I think it was just a little extra. Does this make sense? Do people follow what we have right here? Because what does this mean? I think if you look at this down here and understand this is the estimate of the true difference, now it makes more sense. Because think about this. The true difference is somewhere between -2 to -10. So if you're subtracting numbers, Darren would be better. Because if you're subtracting numbers, the second number being negative would pull more. Like, this is hypothetical. It could be that Brian gets somewhere to 2 and Darren gets somewhere of 8 points, because what's the difference here of these? What is the difference in those? If I get 2 points and Darren gets 8 points in games on average. If I get on average 2 points and Darren gets on average 8 points. And we're just pretending it's 6, right? But not just 6, it's what 6? It's what 6? It's not 6, it's -6. But what happens right here, and this is that's not an interval. That's saying hypothetically the truth is Brian gets 2 points, and hypothetically the truth is Darren gets 8 points. That's why I have it up here with this. Does that make sense? This is an interval. That is just a hypothetical. Brian gets 2 points on average, Darren gets 8 points. It's a hypothetical of what the true means might be. Because what if we saw this instead? Hypothetically, Brian's truth is 8. Hypothetically, Darren's truth is 2. Notice now the interval is what? Hypothetically, Brian gets 8 and Darren gets 2. Now the interval is what? Now the interval is what? Now the interval is what? I changed it because now hypothetically the truth is Brian gets 8. Hypothetically, the truth is Darren gets 2. And we made an interval to estimate it, and for some reason it did a really good job of estimating it. The interval is not negative anymore. It is what? Notice I changed the mathematics to when you're solving out now. The interval is not negative. The interval is what? It's positive. So how would you interpret this interval? I am 95% confident that the true difference between Brian and Darren's scores is somewhere between Brian getting 2 points to Brian getting 10 points more than Darren on average. Does that make sense? The true difference, because that's what we're trying to understand. We're trying to understand the true difference. And since the interval is positive, and the 2 doesn't go with this, that's not 2 for this, that's not 10 for this. This is an estimate of what the true difference might be between Brian and Darren. And since it's positive, that means we think the bigger number is higher. The first one is a bigger number. If the interval was negative, then we would think that there's evidence the second mean is the bigger one. Does that make sense? So this is where I am 95% confident the true difference between Brian and Darren is somewhere between Darren getting 2 to 10 points more per game on average. Does that make sense? Versus I am 95% confident that the true difference between Brian and Darren in their points per game is somewhere between Brian getting 2 to 10 points more than Darren on average. Does that make sense to what this interval is trying to interpret? Go back to the other one. I am 95% confident that the true difference between Brian and Darren is somewhere between 2 to 10 points more per game for Darren, because it's negative. We're estimating the true difference. One last thing, I hope this makes sense right here if I highlight it this way. This right here is trying to estimate the difference between them. Does that make sense? I'm not a student, this is a college class, but well, we're welcome to have you. It is a college class. It's just us helping out, Nathan. I like that. Is that an Adam right there, Nathaniel? We're glad to have you. We'll throw you some UBot points, and then we're going to do some more homework.
Nathaniel, you're always welcome here. You can learn stats here. Thank you, Nathaniel.
Yes, that's Mubot. He gives the points. We're going to do some more homework, Nathaniel. Check it out and ask questions if you got them. We just have some fun here, Nathaniel. We do some work, and I'm glad you got recommended. That's cool. Hey, we get recommendations right there. Have you ever taken stats? And we're going to do the homework. Kay Olin, Braden, good to see you there. We've had people from all over the world visit. We've had people from Germany, Australia, Russia, India. I'm trying to think where else. Just random things. Someone comes in, they say, hey, this was recommended to me, or hey, I was looking at stats. Maybe you were trying to figure out how to do some stats or some math, and it said, ooh, smash like, Nathaniel. Don't hit dislike. Okay, let's do the homework. Question 1. I'm getting it loaded in the background. I think they already ran. They said it. Oh, we didn't even answer that question? Uh-oh. Well, I've got a video on it, but if the interval is positive, the first mean is evidence to be higher. If the interval is negative, it's evidence the second mean is higher. And let's do the full homework. Who's still here wanting to do the homework? Noel, did you have that question, Noel? If you screenshot it, I can send the answer. Let's do the homework. Let's do it. I'll look at that one here next. Remember, if it's negative interval evidence, the second mean is higher. If it's positive interval evidence, the first mean is higher. So here we go. Do customers spend more on trips to Target or Walmart? Pretty much the same thing right here. And you notice they've got the summary statistics. Okay, so we need to know what these are, as we always say here.
Notation,
I
brother.
know that notation. What are all these things going in order? Help me out. This is how we get ready for the test. What are all these things going in order right here? This will help a lot for later questions. What are all these things in order right here? Going from this to this to this. You have to know your notation. Boom, sample size. Not the intervals yet. Good answers and good questions. We'll throw some points. So this is sample size. This is, what else do we have? That's sample size. That's N is sample size. What else do we have? If you don't have these, write these down in the back of your notebook. Good to see you, Elizabeth. W in the class. What else do we have? Sample size, what else? Because if you know the notation, you can solve all the questions. Wow! Everyone! Wow! Nice job. I'll do it with my bad handwriting. I'll even answer one. Sample standard deviation. Nice job. 5,000 points.
Wow.
Good job. Sample standard deviation, sample mean, sorry about my bad handwriting, sample size, sample mean, and sample standard deviation. Some people use X bar, it just means of variable X. We use Y bar, same thing. Fail on fire right there, exactly. Let's throw an extra 5,000 points. Students are very happy with the points right there. MuBot tracking the points. You can always check your points level, Nathaniel, by typing exclamation points, and MuBot will tell you your points. We've also got quotes from our class, and we got jokes. Lots of fun things in here. Okay, let's finish the question and answer it. Okay, we know what the notation is, and let's see what they want us to do. Select the correct choice because we're going to check the conditions. We know what our conditions... Oh, well, wow. Well, they taught you well. Taught you very well. Remember the notation. Great job. So with this right here, oh, I got a UTK student there. With this, we have our conditions. Condition 1 is randomness. Condition 2 is 10%, means we sample less than 10% of the population. Condition 3 is nearly normal because we pause, and it's going to be the nearly normal condition to see if the distributions are slightly normal. If I'm sure Nathaniel knows of the T distribution by William Gossett. And because of the central limit theorem, I'm throwing lots of things your way right now. Because of the central limit theorem, the distribution of the mean will become more normal and can be described using the student T distribution. Last condition for the two sample T. Does anyone know it for 5,000 points? If you say, I don't know, I'll give you the points anyways. It just shows you're listening. Does anyone know what the last condition is for the two sample T? Condition 1, random. Condition 2, 10%. Condition 3, nearly normal. Condition 4, what is it? Condition 4, what is condition 4? What is condition 4? Does anybody know it? Even if you say, I don't know, we'll throw you the points. What is condition number 4 for the two sample T? The fourth condition is no clue, all three of the 5,000 points. Well, here's where to go to find out the answer. And we threw the points. Where to go to find out the answer is to go to the review page here, pinned in the chat, and you can see me talking through them in past tense 4 years ago right now. And the last condition is independent means. Handwriting hasn't gotten any better over the years. Two sample T, which is going to be Mr. T for means, and you can see right there the t-test is always for means, and it's going to be independent means. That means group 1 does not influence group 2, and if you have dependent means, you're doing what's called a paired t-test, which we don't teach in Stat 201. So let's look over there, questions right here. You would think Walmart and Target wouldn't influence each other, like what people pay at Walmart does not influence what people pay at Target. So I would assume that all the conditions are met, assume that the samples were randomly chosen, random condition 1, assume that they're independent of each other, independence. It must be also assumed that the distributions are roughly normal, nearly normal. So it'd be a good idea to check the histograms. That makes sense to me right there. Okay, good. That was a big answer. And they didn't mention the less than 10%, but of all the sales at Walmart, I doubt you've gotten more than 10% of all sales. That's a very complex condition dealing with finite populations. Well, that was it. That was the first question. Once again, we spend a little more time on them because you have to know what you need to know for the test. Remember, the conditions are random, 10% for all the tests. Random means you randomly select them. 10% means you select less than 10% of the population size. And then if it's categorical, success, failure, at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures. Nearly normal if it's quantitative, meaning the distributions are roughly normal. Ways of checking that, looking at a histogram, central limit theorem. Chi-squared, which we'll be talking about tomorrow, is expected cell count at least 5. And there is a fourth condition for these last two tests of independent means and count data. Write this down or take a picture of it. That way you have this to reference, because we do ask you what are the conditions and what do they mean, and you have to know what are they for. So good questions right there. Okay, we've got the same sort of thing. So we need to know our what with this in the corner to solve a lot of these questions for the homeworks and the quizzes. What do we need to know for a lot of the questions? Tell me in the chat, because Leo knows. What do we need to know? Notation, brother.
Notation,
points
brother.
right there. You got to know your notation. And we just did this a moment ago. It's chapter 17, homework question 2, notation, brother. So with notation, we have the sample mean, the sample size, and sample mean, and sample standard deviation. Sample size is how many people you talk to who play football and baseball. Sample mean is the average age of these individuals. Baseball players were a little bit older on average. The standard deviation represents a metric of spread around the mean, a typical distance, telling you that most individuals are probably plus or minus 2 standard deviations. So if you think about a baseball player, they're probably somewhere between 20-ish to 35. Makes sense. Most baseball players, 20 to 35. Makes sense. Most football players, 20 to 32. Not talking Tom Brady, Brett Favre. We're talking most on average, not outliers who play much later. So conditions, once again, I think we have the same sort of idea right here. Be very careful. This is nonsense. So you see this and you're like, nope, more than 50%. That's not what we're doing. And assume that they're random, independent. It is D, man. We're glad to have you here. It's the same question again. 5,000. Every question Nathaniel gets right. We're throwing 5,000. Is that all that question was? Nathaniel, we got to throw some harder questions at this. You ready? We're just rocking and rolling. It was the same type of question. That's too easy. Too easy. 5,000 points for Nathaniel right answers. Okay, next question on the homework here. Now we get to one, Noel, that we just covered at the start. Oh, man, this is awesome. So here we go. Well, here's one just like the one we did a moment ago. Take a look at this. This one's a bit of a weird experiment where you're popping. I know. I gotta bring my A game, or else I gotta bring my A game. Gotta get your head in the game. So if you notice right here, we get the interval. What is this interval trying to estimate? Don't look at the answers yet. What is this interval trying to estimate? They put a popcorn bag in the freezer overnight, and they left a popcorn bag on the counter, and a bunch of students did this, and they did it with like tons and tons of students. They were trying to estimate the what? What were they trying to estimate? Remember what we're doing right here for the 2 sample T. We're doing 2 sample T's. So a bunch of students, like you have like 30 students use the freezer method. They put the bag in the freezer overnight. The true difference in how many unpopped popcorn kernels there are from the freezer method and the counter method. Does that make sense? The true difference in unpopped popcorn kernels. So the interval, just kind of going off of memory here, I just saw it for a moment, was something like 117 negative through negative 14. So what does this mean? Remember, they're trying to estimate the true difference. So we know that these numbers do not represent. What they don't mean is they don't mean this is the first number here and this is the second number here. That's not what they mean. Does that make sense? Negative 117 is not for the first value. Negative 14 is not for the first value. It's trying to estimate the true difference. So the negative is the key to this interval, and understanding what the interval is the interval is an estimate of what this difference is. You might as well call the difference X, and you're trying to estimate X. So you could call this difference X. And what is this true difference between them? So what does this interval mean? Which method, on average, had more unpopped popcorn kernels? Which method had, on average, more unpopped popcorn kernels? I'm going to make some changes to numbers to make them nicer. Which method had, on average, more unpopped popcorn kernels? Reverse, Braden. So here's a key. Braden, good answers. We'll still throw you 5,000 right there. Braden, good answers. It's actually the counter method. When the interval is negative, the second mean was larger. When the interval is negative, do you see how the negative is associated with this value over here? Like the negative is associated over here. So if you see the negative, the second mean is the larger one. Think of this. 2 minus 5 is negative. So when you have the second number as larger, you get a negative difference. Does that make sense? When the second is larger, there's a negative difference. Does that make sense? So how about this? What if I told you to interpret this interval, we could say the following. I rewrote the interval to make the math super nice. 150 plus or minus 50. If you review, we've been practicing how to get the center. It's the average of the two numbers and should be negative. We don't need to negative 50 yet because it's plus or minus. So this interval right here is completely negative. And I would say the counter method on average has, so it's not negative popped. Good answers, Nathaniel. Points right there in the chat. It's that on average, the counter method had 150 plus or minus 50 more unpopped popcorn kernels. So the counter method, since the difference is negative, the counter method had more unpopped popcorn kernels on average. Because remember, we're estimating the difference between the average amount. So on average, the counter method had between 100 to 200 more unpopped popcorn kernels. But if the interval was this right here, and it would technically go reverse order, now it would be on average, the freezer method had more unpopped popcorn kernels with 100 to 200 more on average, which is 150 plus or minus 50. If the interval was positive, does that make sense? Because it would be something like 500 minus 350, which isn't, I don't know how big these popcorn pegs are, but notice that that has a difference of 150, and then we'd get a margin of error to estimate the true difference, which is not being calculated here. This is just understanding what the interval is. And so let's repeat the knowledge. We have evidence the second mean is higher. Yes. So, and Nathaniel's seeing it right there. We have evidence the second mean is higher if the interval is negative. We have evidence the first mean is higher if the interval is positive. So with the new value, difference is 100, and we have it. Oh my gosh, Noel. Oh, no. So yes. I think I see it. My gosh, you're right. The length of the interval is 100, and then you have it to get the margin of error. So Noel, great job and great answer right there. As Noel is pointing out, the margin of error is half the length of the interval. So when you take half the length of the interval, that's 50 right there. Huge handwriting. Good answers, good practice. Let's answer the question here. Since both numbers are negative, that is evidence the second mean is higher, so the counter is larger with 95% confidence. That's all it is. Like I said, if you know how to solve it, that's why we go over the theory here on how to get this, because remember, the negative interval is evidence of a higher second mean because you're estimating the true difference between the means. Okay, another short, easy one again. Acing this homework, Kaolin. I think we're going to have more than enough time to do the full homework and do more quiz questions. Homework question 4, let's look at the theory on it. In order to use the method in this chapter to compare two means, which of the following conditions is not appropriate? A, B, C, or D? Go ahead and answer it nice and quick. Condition 1, randomness. Condition 2, 10%. Everyone knows it's A. Coach, I got to get back to work. Thank you so much. Glad to see UTK allowing. Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel. Let's do this. And Nathaniel, you should check your points sometime too. Points, add, plus. Well, I'm really glad. It's an honor, Nathaniel. And it is answer A. Yeah, we do some pretty fun stuff here, and we interact, and you're seeing just general office hours. We also teach class this way. The streams are unlisted for class. That way, I always want random people to see what we're doing here, but class is unlisted, so you have to have the links for class. And then we've got the point system. We got MuBot. We got a bunch of other things. We got intros. Honored that you're doing this. Looks like you're an engineering major, so great job, and Godspeed right there to you also. Enjoy. And I always like random. So we had just a lot of randomness. Didn't know we get another UTK student, but I like it. Thank you, Nathaniel. Lots of points, just earned everyone major MuBucks. Okay, here we go with another question. The answer to the last one was we don't do success failure. That's for categorical data, because I don't know, success, failure, third condition, categorical variables. Check out the review videos. Okay, we're almost done with the homework. Almost done. That's a really great, that kind of makes my morning. It's just nice positivity. You need that every once in a while. I paid anything I would come in here. Okay, in July 2007, Consumer Reports examined the calorie content of 2 different kinds of hot dogs. Meat, usually pork, turkey, chicken, and beef. That's what's for dinner. The researchers purchased samples of several different brands. The meat hot dogs had this many calories. The beef hot dogs had this many calories. A test of the null hypothesis that there's no difference in the mean calorie content yielded a p-value of this. Would it include 0? Okay. Few concepts to remember right here. Huge thing you need to know. When the p-value is low, we what the what. When the p-value is high, we what the what. Repeat to me the saying when the p-value is low. What do we do? When the p-value is low, reject the null. And lower than value of alpha. When the p-value is low, reject the null. When the p-value is high, just let it fly. And once again, there is more to this because it's easy to say when the p-value is low, reject the null, but it's when the p-value is low than the value of alpha, which is usually assumed to be 0.05 unless otherwise stated by a problem, but most researchers will use a 0.05 alpha because they don't want to mess with their type 1 error. Like, there's a lot to go with the theory of that. When the p-value is high, just let it fly, as in don't reject it. People usually don't say don't reject. I wish they did. I wish everyone said I reject or don't reject the null. What are the 2 phrases you should hear? You have reject or usually what? What is the classical way of saying don't reject that I have to teach you because people will use it? But I prefer the world say don't reject. I wish everyone just said I reject or don't reject. Fail to reject, exactly. It's like I failed to go to the mall. I didn't fail to go to the mall this weekend. I got a lot of Pokemon. So that means I went to the mall. You either go to the mall or fail to go to the mall. You either go to the mall or don't go to the mall. But you don't accept the mall. Don't accept. Those are bad words in this class. So we reject the null or fail to reject the null, and those are hints for the test. So we can look at the p-value, which was about this. So that p-value is definitely what? I don't think they gave an alpha, but alpha, which is when we reject, is going to be a 0.05 unless otherwise stated. So we would do what here? We would definitely do what? I mean, very, very easy. If you don't know, don't worry. But it said, here's your p-value, probably alpha this. You got it. It's higher. Let it fly. So what are we letting fly? Well, the null hypothesis, we're trying to test between beef and meat and look at their what and their whats. We're trying to test mu beef minus mu meat, and look at their what. We're trying to look at the what between their whats. We're trying to look at the whats. The difference in how many calories there are. So we are going to not reject the null, which means we still believe what? We're going to not reject the null because the p-value is high, p-value is high, just let it fly. So do you think it's possible the difference is 0? Do you think it's possible the difference is 0? It's a hypothetical interval. Yeah, because we don't reject the null. So you notice this interval contains 0. Since this interval contains 0, 0 is a possible value of the truth. Does that make sense? I just made up this interval. But it might be that meat has somewhere between 100 more calories because the negative is associated with the second number. Or it could be as much as beef having 50 more calories because the positive is associated with the first number. And if beef could have more or meat could have more, then we don't know if one of them actually has more, and 0 is contained in the interval. Does that make sense? Since 0 is contained in the interval, we wouldn't reject the value of 0, or we could say since we don't reject the value of 0, 0 would be in the interval. Does that make sense? That's the theory for this one. Because if you don't reject 0 as a possible value of truth, it would have to be contained in an interval relative to the 95% confidence if done on a two-tailed test. And yeah, a lot of theory on this one. Very good question. So what's the answer? A, B, C, or D? See if you can find the answer for me with everything I just taught you. A, B, C, or D? What do you think? Which one is it? So would a 95% confidence interval contain 0? We didn't reject the null. Think about everything I said. What would it be, A, B, C, or D? We'll almost be done with the homework. A, B, C, or D?